5 members of the Johnson family loaded their station wagon on a sunny June morning in 1983, excited for the road trip of a lifetime. 2 weeks later, they were supposed to return home to Denver with stories, souvenirs, and memories that would last forever. They never made it home. For 41 years, their disappearance remained one of America's most baffling family mysteries. Until March 2024, when highway construction workers made a discovery so shocking it would expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of federal law enforcement. What they found, buried beneath decades of asphalt, wasn't just evidence. It was proof that the very agencies trusted to find missing families were the ones responsible for making them disappear. This is the story of the Johnson family road trip that became a nightmare, and how the truth finally surfaced after 4 decades of lies. But what you're about to hear goes deeper than just one family's tragedy. This is a story about how ordinary Americans can become targets of their own government, how patriotism can be twisted into betrayal, and how the pursuit of truth can cost everything you hold dear. If you're new to this channel, I investigate fictional cold cases and unsolved mysteries that explore the darkest corners of human nature and government power. Subscribe now, because this story will take you on a journey through family bonds, military honor, government corruption, and the kind of truth that powerful people kill to keep hidden. But before I tell you about that earth-shattering discovery in 2024, you need to understand who the Johnsons were, why they took that fateful road trip, and how 5 innocent people became pawns in a conspiracy that would reshape American foreign policy for decades to come. The story begins not in 1983, but in 1968, in the jungles of Vietnam, where a young soldier named Robert Johnson would witness something that would haunt him for the rest of his life, and ultimately doom his entire family 15 years later. Robert Bob Johnson was 19 years old when he was drafted into the United States Army in February 1968. Like thousands of young men his age, Bob had been living a typical American life in Denver, working construction jobs after high school and dating Linda Martinez, a sweet girl from his neighborhood who taught Sunday school at the local Catholic church. The Vietnam War changed everything for Bob Johnson, not just because of the combat he experienced, but because of what he saw American forces doing in operations that officially never happened. Bob was assigned to the 5th Special Forces Group, a unit that conducted classified missions across Southeast Asia, operations that violated international law and treaties that America had signed. During his second tour in Vietnam, from 1969 to 1970, Bob witnessed American soldiers selling weapons to drug cartels, stealing gold and artifacts from villages they were supposed to protect, and executing prisoners who should have been handed over to South Vietnamese forces. But the worst thing Bob saw was an operation called Golden Triangle, where American forces were directly involved in heroin trafficking, using military transport planes to move drugs from Southeast Asia to distribution networks in the United States. Bob documented what he saw, taking photographs and keeping detailed notes in a journal that he hid in his footlocker. He planned to report the corruption when he returned to the United States, believing that exposing the truth was his duty as an American soldier and citizen. But when Bob tried to report what he had witnessed to military authorities, he was told that his allegations were unfounded, and that continuing to pursue them would result in a court-martial for making false accusations against fellow soldiers. Bob was given a choice: accept an honorable discharge and never speak about what he had seen, or face military justice for spreading lies about American forces. Bob chose to stay silent, but he never forgot what he had witnessed. The journal and photographs remained hidden in his personal effects, a secret burden that he carried back to civilian life in Denver. Bob returned to Colorado in late 1970, marrying Linda Martinez in a small ceremony at St. Catherine's Church in December of that year. He used his GI benefits to start Johnson & Sons Construction, naming the company after the sons he hoped to have someday. Bob threw himself into building his business and starting a family, trying to put the horrors of Vietnam behind him. But the past has a way of catching up with people, and the secrets that Bob Johnson carried would eventually put his entire family in mortal danger. Linda Martinez Johnson was 21 when she married Bob, a gentle woman with dark eyes and a kind heart who believed in the goodness of people and the strength of family bonds. She had waited faithfully for Bob during his 2 tours in Vietnam, writing him letters every day and praying for his safe return at evening mass. Linda knew that Bob had been changed by his experiences in the war. He had nightmares that woke him in the middle of the night, and sometimes she would find him sitting on their back porch at 3 a.m, smoking cigarettes and staring at the stars. When she asked him what was wrong, Bob would just hold her close and tell her that some things were better left buried. Linda didn't push for details about Bob's military service, but she recognized the signs of a man carrying deep emotional wounds. She focused on creating a loving home environment where Bob could heal and they could build a future together. Linda's patience and unconditional love helped Bob gradually find peace with his civilian life. By 1975, Linda had given birth to their first child, Michelle, a beautiful baby girl with Bob's brown hair and Linda's gentle temperament. The arrival of their daughter seemed to complete Bob's transformation from haunted veteran to devoted family man. He would spend hours holding Michelle, telling her stories and singing lullabies that his own father had sung to him. Linda continued working as a teacher at Maple Elementary School, where she was beloved by students and parents alike. She had a gift for making every child in her classroom feel valued and encouraged, treating each student as if they were her own. Linda's salary helped support the family while Bob built his construction business from the ground up. The Johnsons lived in a small apartment during their first years of marriage, saving every penny to buy their first home. Linda managed their finances with the same careful attention she brought to lesson planning, creating budgets and tracking expenses in a series of notebooks that she kept on the kitchen counter. In 1978, Linda gave birth to their second child, a son they named Thomas after Bob's father. Tommy was an active baby who grew into an energetic toddler with a passion for baseball that emerged almost before he could walk. Bob spent countless hours in their backyard, teaching Tommy to throw and catch, sharing his own love of America's pastime. Linda watched her husband and son play catch in the evenings, grateful for the happiness that had replaced the darkness she had seen in Bob's eyes when he first returned from Vietnam. The family was growing and thriving, and Linda began to dream of buying a house with a bigger yard where the children could play safely. Their third child, Sarah, was born in 1975, completing the family that Linda had always envisioned. Sarah was a sunny, cheerful baby who brought laughter into every room she entered. Bob adored his youngest daughter, calling her his little princess and spoiling her with toys and attention that Linda pretended to disapprove of but secretly encouraged. By 1980, Johnson & Sons Construction had grown successful enough for the family to buy their dream house on Maple Drive in Denver's Lakewood neighborhood. It was a split-level home with 4 bedrooms, a 2-car garage, and the big backyard that Linda had wanted for the children. Bob had personally supervised every aspect of the construction, ensuring that his family's home was built to the highest standards. But success brought Bob Johnson to the attention of people who knew about his military service and the secrets he had kept hidden for over a decade. When Johnson & Sons Construction was selected for several high-security government contracts, including work on classified facilities in Colorado, federal agencies began reviewing Bob's background in detail. What they discovered in his military records would set in motion the events that led to his family's destruction. By 1983, Michelle Johnson had grown into a remarkable young woman who combined her father's work ethic with her mother's compassionate nature. At 16, she was an honor student at Denver West High School, maintaining a 3.8 grade point average while working part-time at Morrison's grocery store to save money for college. Michelle had inherited her father's practical intelligence and her mother's attention to detail. Her bedroom was organized like a business office, with color-coded files for her school assignments, college application materials, and the photography projects that had become her passion. Photography wasn't just a hobby for Michelle, it was her way of understanding and documenting the world around her. She had started taking pictures when she was 12, using an old Kodak Instamatic that belonged to her grandmother. By age 14, Michelle had saved enough money from babysitting and her grocery store job to buy a professional-quality Canon AE1 camera. Michelle's photographs revealed an artistic eye that impressed her high school photography teacher, Mrs. Patterson, who had encouraged her to enter several regional competitions. Michelle had won second place in the Colorado High School Photography Championship with a series of portraits featuring elderly residents at a local nursing home. But Michelle's real talent was for capturing candid moments that revealed character and emotion. Her bedroom walls were covered with photographs of her family, Tommy sliding into home plate during a Little League game, Sarah dancing in the backyard sprinkler, her parents holding hands during a church picnic. These images captured the essence of a happy American family, living the dream that Bob and Linda had worked so hard to create. Michelle had been accepted to the University of Colorado's journalism program and planned to major in photojournalism with the goal of working for National Geographic or Time magazine. She dreamed of traveling the world, documenting important stories, and bringing truth to light through her photographs. What Michelle didn't know was that her talent for capturing revealing images would make her a target during their family road trip. The photographs she took during those final days would document more than family memories. They would record evidence of a conspiracy that powerful people would kill to suppress. Michelle had spent weeks planning the photographic documentation of their road trip, researching the historical and scenic locations they would visit. She had purchased extra rolls of film and organized her camera equipment with the precision of a professional photographer preparing for an important assignment. Michelle's dedication to documenting their journey would inadvertently create a visual record of the surveillance that followed them from Denver to Arizona. Her innocent desire to capture family memories would produce evidence that investigators would study for decades, trying to understand exactly what happened to the Johnson family. Thomas "Tommy" Johnson was 12 years old in the summer of 1983, a boy whose passion for baseball consumed nearly every waking moment of his life. Tommy lived and breathed the game, studying statistics, memorizing player biographies, and practicing his batting stance in front of the mirror every morning before school. Tommy played shortstop for the Denver Cubs, a Little League team sponsored by Morrison's grocery store, where his sister Michelle worked. He was small for his age, but made up for his size with quick reflexes and an understanding of the game that impressed coaches and parents alike. Tommy could calculate batting averages in his head and knew the starting lineup for every team in Major League Baseball. The boy's bedroom looked like a shrine to America's pastime, with baseball cards covering every wall, trophies from Little League competitions filling 2 bookcases, and a collection of signed baseballs that represented years of attending Denver Bears games with his father. Bob Johnson had passed his own love of baseball to his son, taking Tommy to professional games whenever his work schedule allowed. They would arrive early to watch batting practice, staying late to get autographs from players who were impressed by Tommy's knowledge of the game and his intelligent questions about strategy and technique. Tommy's hero was Cal Ripken Jr., the Baltimore Orioles shortstop, who had just begun his consecutive game streak that would eventually make him a legend. Tommy wore his Orioles jersey almost everywhere, studying Ripken's technique and trying to emulate his defensive style during Little League games. But Tommy's love of baseball was about more than just the game itself. For him, baseball represented everything good about America: fairness, teamwork, the reward of hard work, and the belief that anyone could succeed if they had enough talent and determination. Tommy truly believed that he could make it to the major leagues someday, and his parents encouraged that dream while privately hoping he would also focus on his education. Tommy's enthusiasm and natural curiosity made him popular with his teammates and coaches, but those same qualities would put him in danger during the family road trip. His tendency to ask questions and explore new places would lead the family to make stops and detours that brought them to the attention of people who were watching their every move. Tommy had convinced his parents to plan their route through St. Louis so they could visit Busch Stadium and watch the Cardinals play the Chicago Cubs. He had been saving his allowance for months to buy authentic MLB merchandise and hopefully get autographs from professional players. Tommy's baseball glove, a Wilson A2000 that his grandfather had given him for his 11th birthday, never left his side. He brought it everywhere, constantly breaking it in and oiling the leather until it fit his hand like a second skin. That glove would travel with the family on their final journey and become part of the evidence that investigators would discover 41 years later. Sarah Elizabeth Johnson was 8 years old, the baby of the family whose innocent joy and unconditional love brought light into every day of her parents' lives. With blonde curls that caught sunlight like spun gold and bright blue eyes that sparkled with mischief and wonder, Sarah was the kind of child who made strangers smile just by being herself. Sarah had been born during one of the happiest periods of her parents' marriage, when Bob's construction business was beginning to succeed, and Linda had found her rhythm balancing motherhood with her teaching career. Sarah's arrival completed their family in ways that went beyond simple numbers. She was the final piece that made everything feel perfect and whole. The youngest Johnson child had inherited her father's optimistic nature and her mother's warm heart. Sarah believed in fairy tales and happy endings, trusted everyone she met, and approached each day as if it held unlimited possibilities for adventure and discovery. Sarah's bedroom was a wonderland of stuffed animals, picture books, and toys that reflected her vivid imagination. But her most treasured possession was Teddy, a brown teddy bear that had been a gift from her grandmother on her 2nd birthday. Teddy went everywhere with Sarah, serving as confidant, protector, and constant companion through the small dramas and adventures of childhood. Sarah had been counting down the days until their road trip to Disney World, marking off dates on a calendar that hung beside her bed. She had watched every Disney movie multiple times, memorizing songs and dialogue, dreaming of meeting Mickey Mouse and seeing Cinderella's castle in person. Linda had spent hours with Sarah, looking at travel brochures and planning which attractions they would visit first at Disney World. Sarah had made detailed lists of the souvenirs she wanted to buy for her friends, the rides she was most excited to experience, and the Disney characters she hoped to meet and photograph with her family. But Sarah's excitement about the road trip went beyond just the destination. She loved the idea of spending 2 weeks in the car with her family, playing games, singing songs, and seeing new places together. For Sarah, the journey was just as important as arriving at Disney World. Sarah's trusting nature and innocent curiosity would make her particularly vulnerable during the events that unfolded on their road trip. Her inability to recognize danger or understand the adult world of deception and betrayal would add an additional layer of tragedy to what happened to the Johnson family. The stuffed bear Teddy that never left Sarah's side would become one of the most poignant pieces of evidence discovered in 2024, a reminder of the innocence that was destroyed when 5 family members encountered the dark side of American power. The Johnson family lived in a house that perfectly reflected their values and dreams. Located at 1247 Maple Drive in Denver's Lakewood neighborhood, their split-level home was part of a community where children rode bicycles safely in the streets, neighbors looked out for each other, and the American dream seemed attainable for families willing to work hard. Bob had built several other homes in the neighborhood, establishing Johnson & Sons Construction as a trusted name among middle-class families who wanted quality craftsmanship at fair prices. Bob's reputation for honest dealing and attention to detail had earned him a steady stream of referrals and repeat customers. The success of Bob's construction business had attracted attention from government contractors looking for reliable builders who could handle sensitive projects requiring security clearances. Bob's military service record, combined with his clean background check and proven competence, made him an ideal candidate for classified construction projects. In 1981, Johnson & Sons Construction was awarded a contract to build facilities at a classified government installation in the Colorado mountains. The project required Bob to obtain a top-secret security clearance and sign agreements that prohibited him from discussing any aspect of the work with family members or employees. Bob was proud to be contributing to national security projects, viewing it as an extension of his military service and his patriotic duty. He approached the classified construction work with the same attention to detail and commitment to excellence that had made his civilian projects successful. But during the construction process, Bob discovered something that shattered his faith in the government he had served and trusted. Hidden within the classified facility he was building were storage areas designed to hold weapons and materials that officially didn't exist, equipment that was being secretly sold to foreign governments and organizations. Bob recognized some of the weapons from his time in Vietnam, remembering the serial numbers and specifications from arms that had been reported destroyed or lost in combat. The realization that American weapons were being illegally trafficked through covert operations brought back memories of the corruption he had witnessed in Southeast Asia. Bob faced the same impossible choice that had confronted him 15 years earlier in Vietnam: stay silent and be complicit in illegal activities, or risk everything to expose the truth. This time, Bob decided he couldn't stay quiet. The man who had been forced into silence as a young soldier was determined to speak out as a civilian citizen. Bob began secretly documenting the illegal activities he witnessed at the classified facility, taking photographs and copying serial numbers when security guards weren't watching. He started keeping detailed notes about shipping schedules, personnel involved, and the foreign destinations where American weapons were being illegally sent. Bob's plan was to wait until after the family road trip to contact investigative journalists who could help expose the illegal arms trafficking. He had already identified reporters who had covered government corruption stories, and he was prepared to provide them with evidence that could bring down a conspiracy involving millions of dollars and some of the most powerful people in Washington. But Bob's communications had been monitored by federal agents who were tasked with protecting Operation Desert Shield, the covert arms trafficking program that generated profits used to fund other illegal activities around the world. The FBI had placed Bob Johnson under surveillance months before the family road trip, recording his phone calls, reading his mail, and monitoring his movements. They knew exactly what Bob was planning to do, and they were prepared to take whatever steps were necessary to protect their operation. The road trip that Bob and Linda had planned as a celebration of family togetherness became the perfect opportunity for federal agents to eliminate a security threat that could expose decades of government corruption. Planning the road trip had been Linda's project for over a year, a labor of love that reflected her careful attention to detail and her desire to create perfect family memories. Linda approached vacation planning with the same organizational skills she brought to managing her third-grade classroom, researching every aspect of their journey to ensure that her family would have the experience of a lifetime. Linda had purchased road atlases, travel guides, and brochures from dozens of attractions along their planned route. She had contacted motels and restaurants, making reservations and asking detailed questions about accommodations and services. Linda's planning binder contained typed itineraries, backup plans for bad weather, and lists of emergency contacts for every state they would visit. The route Linda had planned would take them through some of America's most beautiful and historically significant locations, From Denver, they would drive south through Colorado Springs and into New Mexico, visiting Santa Fe and Albuquerque, before heading east on the legendary Route 66. Route 66 held special significance for Linda, who had grown up hearing stories about the Mother Road from her grandfather, who had driven it during the Great Depression while looking for work in California. Linda wanted her children to experience the same sense of adventure and discovery that had drawn millions of Americans westward during the 20th century. From New Mexico, the family would travel through Arizona, with stops at the Grand Canyon and other natural wonders, before continuing east through Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, and into Florida for a week at Disney World and the beaches of the Gulf Coast. Linda had calculated every mile of the journey, estimating driving times and identifying rest stops, tourist attractions, and photo opportunities that would interest each member of the family. She had packed games and activities to keep the children entertained during long stretches of highway, and she had prepared a cooler with homemade snacks and sandwiches. But Linda's careful planning couldn't account for the surveillance team that had been monitoring the Johnson family for months. Federal agents had been watching their house, tracking their movements, and intercepting their communications. The agents knew every detail of Linda's travel plans, including their motel reservations, planned stops, and expected timeline. The family road trip that Linda had designed to strengthen family bonds and create lasting memories would become a carefully orchestrated trap, with federal agents positioned at strategic locations along their route, waiting for the perfect opportunity to make 5 people disappear forever. Linda had no way of knowing that their vacation plans had been compromised, or that the government agents who were supposed to protect American families were preparing to destroy hers. The Johnson family left Denver on June 15, 1983, at exactly 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that dawned clear and bright with unlimited visibility and a gentle breeze that made the summer air feel perfect for traveling. Bob had loaded their blue 1981 Ford Country Squire station wagon the night before, carefully packing suitcases in the rear cargo area and organizing games, snacks, and entertainment within easy reach of the children. The Ford Country Squire was a symbol of American family life in the 1980s, a reliable vehicle designed specifically for families who wanted comfort, space, and safety for long-distance travel. Bob had purchased the station wagon new in 1981, choosing it specifically for family vacations and road trips. Michelle had spent the previous evening loading her camera equipment and organizing the film that she planned to use for documenting their journey. She had calculated exactly how many photographs she could take with the film she had purchased, planning shots for each major stop and attraction they would visit. Tommy had packed his baseball glove, a collection of baseball cards for trading with kids they might meet along the way, and his Baltimore Orioles jersey which he planned to wear when they visited Busch Stadium in St. Louis. His excitement about seeing professional baseball games in different cities had kept him awake until almost midnight. Sarah had carefully packed her small suitcase with favorite clothes, several books, and a collection of Disney princess figures that she planned to bring to Disney World. Teddy, her constant companion, was already secured in the seat beside her, ready for the adventure ahead. Linda had prepared a detailed checklist that she consulted before they left, ensuring that the house was properly secured, all necessary documents were packed, and emergency contact information was readily available. She had left detailed instructions for their neighbors about watering plants and collecting mail during their absence. Bob performed a final inspection of their vehicle, checking tire pressure, oil levels, and fluid levels to ensure that they would have no mechanical problems during their journey. He had taken the station wagon to his trusted mechanic for a complete inspection the week before, wanting to eliminate any possibility of breakdowns or delays. At 6:58 a.m., Bob Johnson locked the front door of their house for the last time, checking twice to ensure that their home was secure. The family that climbed into their Ford Country Squire that sunny Tuesday morning was excited, happy, and completely unaware of the danger that awaited them on America's highways. Michelle documented their departure with photographs of the family loading the car, their excited faces revealing the anticipation they all felt for the adventure ahead. These images would later become some of the most poignant evidence in the investigation, showing a family at the peak of happiness just hours before their lives would be destroyed. The dark sedan that followed them from their Denver neighborhood had been positioned there since 5 a.m., with federal agents using surveillance equipment to monitor the Johnson family's preparations and departure. The agents had detailed intelligence about the family's planned route, schedule, and destinations, information that had been gathered through months of illegal surveillance. The Johnson family drove away from 1247 Maple Drive at exactly 7:02 a.m., completely unaware that they would never see their home again, and that powerful forces had already decided their fate. Their first day on the road took them south through Colorado Springs, where they stopped at Garden of the Gods to let the children stretch their legs and take photographs of the dramatic red rock formations. Michelle used almost an entire roll of film capturing images of her family against the stunning natural backdrop, creating memories that would have lasted a lifetime if they had lived to develop them. Tommy was fascinated by the geological formations and peppered his parents with questions about how the rocks had been formed and why they were such vivid colors. Bob enjoyed sharing his knowledge of Colorado's natural history with his son, explaining the forces that had shaped the landscape over millions of years. Sarah delighted in climbing on the smaller rocks and posing for photographs with Teddy, creating whimsical images that captured her joyful personality. Linda carefully supervised her youngest daughter while also keeping an eye on Michelle and Tommy, ensuring that everyone stayed safe while exploring the natural wonder, but they were being followed. The dark sedan that had tailed them from Denver maintained a discreet distance while federal agents photographed the family and documented their activities. The surveillance team was building a detailed record of the Johnson family's final days, information that would later be used to support false narratives about their disappearance. From Colorado Springs, the family continued south toward the New Mexico border, driving through landscapes that became increasingly dramatic as they left the familiar mountains of Colorado behind. The children were excited by the changing scenery, pressing their faces against the windows to get better views of the desert vistas that stretched to the horizon. Linda navigated, using the detailed maps she had marked with their planned route, calling out landmarks and points of interest as they passed. She had researched the history and geology of every area they would traverse, turning their road trip into an educational experience that would broaden her children's understanding of American geography and culture. They stopped for lunch at a family restaurant in Raton, New Mexico, where Tommy struck up a conversation with their waitress about baseball and learned that she had once attended a game at Yankee Stadium. The waitress was charmed by Tommy's encyclopedic knowledge of baseball statistics and his genuine enthusiasm for the game. Sarah entertained the entire restaurant staff with her cheerful chatter about Disney World and her plans for meeting Mickey Mouse. The 8-year-old's infectious excitement about their vacation brought smiles to the faces of strangers who were delighted by her innocent joy and enthusiasm. Michelle took photographs of her family at the restaurant, capturing candid moments that showed them relaxed and happy as they enjoyed their first day of vacation. These images would later be studied by investigators trying to understand the family's state of mind and activities during their final days. But surveillance agents were also in the restaurant, seated at a corner table where they could observe the Johnson family while appearing to be ordinary travelers. The agents took note of conversations the family had with restaurant staff, recording details that would later be used to create false evidence about their disappearance. The family spent their first night in Santa Fe, staying at a family motel that Linda had chosen for its clean rooms, swimming pool, and proximity to historic attractions she wanted to visit the next day. The Pueblo Revival architecture and Native American culture of Santa Fe fascinated the children, who had never experienced anything like the unique blend of Spanish, Mexican, and indigenous influences that defined the city. After checking into their motel, the family spent the evening exploring the plaza area, visiting galleries and shops that showcased traditional New Mexican art and crafts. Bob bought Linda a beautiful turquoise necklace from a local artisan, while Sarah selected a small dream catcher that she planned to hang in her bedroom back home. Tommy was more interested in a shop that displayed historical artifacts, including arrowheads and pottery shards that brought the region's history to life. The shop owner, an elderly Native American man named Joseph Yazzie, spent almost an hour talking with Tommy about the history of the Southwest and the various tribes that had lived in the area for thousands of years. Michelle documented their evening in Santa Fe with photographs that captured the family's fascination with the city's unique character and history. Her images showed parents and children exploring together, sharing discoveries and creating the kind of memories that bind families together across time. But federal agents were watching from across the plaza, using telephoto lenses to photograph the family and surveillance equipment to record their conversations with local residents. The agents were building a comprehensive file on the Johnson family's activities, relationships, and communications during their final week alive. The family returned to their motel room, tired but happy after their first day of vacation adventure. Linda helped Sarah write postcards to her best friends back in Denver, while Bob assisted Tommy with organizing his growing collection of souvenirs, and Michelle reviewed the photographs she had taken during the day. The motel room was filled with laughter and conversation as the family shared their favorite moments from the day and made plans for the next portion of their journey. They had no way of knowing that this would be one of their last nights together as a complete family, or that powerful forces were already moving to ensure they would never return to Denver. In a surveillance van parked across the street from their motel, federal agents were finalizing plans for the Johnson family's elimination. The operation had been authorized at the highest levels of government, with orders that left no room for mercy or alternatives. Bob Johnson's decision to expose government corruption had signed his entire family's death warrant. The next morning dawned bright and clear as the Johnson family prepared for their second day on the road. Linda had planned for them to spend the morning exploring more of Santa Fe's historic sites before continuing their journey toward Arizona, where they would visit the Grand Canyon before heading east on Route 66. But first they wanted to enjoy the motel's swimming pool, which had been one of Sarah's primary requirements when Linda was selecting accommodations. The 8-year-old had packed her favorite swimsuit and had been looking forward to swimming in every motel pool during their vacation. The children played in the water while Bob and Linda relaxed in pool chairs, enjoying the peaceful morning and watching their kids have fun. Michelle took photographs of Tommy and Sarah playing Marco Polo in the pool, capturing images of pure family happiness that would later break the hearts of investigators who studied them decades later. These pool photographs would be among the last images ever taken of the Johnson family alive, preserving forever the joy and love that characterized their final morning together. After swimming and breakfast, the family loaded their station wagon and continued their journey toward Arizona. They drove through Albuquerque, where they stopped at a Native American cultural center that Linda had researched as an educational opportunity for the children. The cultural center featured traditional arts and crafts, historical exhibits, and demonstrations of Native American pottery and jewelry making. Tommy was fascinated by displays of traditional weapons and hunting tools, while Sarah was enchanted by the colorful textiles and beadwork that decorated traditional clothing. Michelle took extensive photographs of the cultural center, documenting both the exhibits and her family's reactions to what they were learning. Her images captured the curiosity and wonder that characterized the Johnson family's approach to new experiences and cultural discoveries. But their innocent educational visit had attracted unwanted attention. A man in a dark suit approached the cultural center's gift shop manager after the Johnson family left, asking detailed questions about their visit, their purchases, and their planned destinations. The gift shop manager, Maria Santos, would later tell investigators that the man's questions had seemed unusual and invasive. He had shown what appeared to be federal identification but had refused to explain why he was interested in a family of tourists from Colorado. From Albuquerque, the Johnson family continued west toward the Arizona border, driving through desert landscapes that seemed to stretch endlessly toward distant mountains. The children were amazed by the vast open spaces and dramatic rock formations that defined the American Southwest. They stopped at several roadside attractions and scenic overlooks, with Michelle documenting their progress through the desert with photographs that would later help investigators trace their route. The family seemed relaxed and happy, enjoying their vacation and each other's company. But the surveillance net was tightening around them. Multiple teams of federal agents were now tracking their movement, coordinating through encrypted radio communications and positioning themselves at strategic locations along the Johnson family's planned route. The family spent their second night at a motel in Flagstaff, Arizona, a mountain town that served as a gateway to the Grand Canyon and other natural wonders of the region. Linda had chosen Flagstaff because of its elevation and cooler temperatures, thinking that the family would appreciate a break from the desert heat. Their motel room overlooked the San Francisco Peaks, a range of volcanic mountains that provided a dramatic backdrop for their evening activities. The family spent time on their room's small balcony, enjoying the mountain air and planning their visit to the Grand Canyon the next day. Tommy was excited about the possibility of seeing elk and other wildlife that inhabited the mountain forests around Flagstaff. He had borrowed several books about southwestern wildlife from the Denver Public Library before their trip, studying the animals they might encounter during their travels. Sarah fell asleep early that night, exhausted from 2 days of travel and adventure. Linda tucked her youngest daughter into bed with Teddy, humming the same lullaby she had sung when Sarah was a baby. The 8-year-old's dreams were filled with images of Disney princesses and Mickey Mouse, unaware that she would never reach the magic kingdom she had dreamed about for months. Bob and Linda sat on their motel room balcony after the children were asleep, holding hands and talking quietly about how well the trip was going. They felt grateful for this time together as a family, away from the pressures of work and daily responsibilities. Bob told Linda how much he loved watching their children discover new places and experiences together. What Bob and Linda didn't know was that federal agents were watching them from surveillance positions around the motel. High-powered listening devices were recording their conversations, while telephoto cameras documented their every movement. The agents were finalizing plans for an operation that would eliminate the Johnson family within the next 24 hours. The next morning, June 18, 1983, would be the last day the Johnson family would ever spend together. It began like any other day of their vacation, with excited children eager to see new sights, and parents happy to share these experiences with them. After breakfast at a family restaurant in Flagstaff, where Tommy charmed their waitress by correctly identifying the hometown of every team in Major League Baseball, the The family drove to the Grand Canyon's south rim. The children's first sight of the massive canyon left them speechless, overwhelmed by the sheer scale and beauty of one of America's greatest natural wonders. Michelle used 3 rolls of film photographing the Grand Canyon and her family's reactions to seeing it. Her images captured not just the spectacular views, but the awe and wonder on her parents' and siblings' faces as they experienced something truly magnificent together. Bob had served in Vietnam, built a successful business, and experienced many challenges in his 35 years, but he later told Linda that watching his children see the Grand Canyon for the first time was one of the most moving experiences of his life. The look of pure amazement in Sarah's eyes as she peered over the safety railings made all the years of hard work and sacrifice worthwhile. Tommy was fascinated by the geological history of the canyon, asking detailed questions about how it had been formed and how long the process had taken. A park ranger took time to explain the different rock layers and their ages, impressed by the 12-year-old's intelligent questions and genuine interest in learning. Sarah was more interested in the chipmunks and squirrels that inhabited the rim area, delighting in their bold approach to tourists hoping for food. Linda helped her youngest daughter understand that wild animals needed to find their own food and shouldn't be fed by visitors, teaching important lessons about respecting nature. The family spent the entire morning at the Grand Canyon, hiking short sections of the Rim Trail and visiting the visitor center to learn more about the natural and cultural history of the area. Michelle documented their entire visit, creating a photographic record that would have provided decades of family memories if they had lived to develop the film. But their innocent family outing was being monitored by federal agents who had positioned themselves throughout the park. The agents photographed the Johnson family from multiple angles, recording their conversations and documenting their interactions with park personnel and other visitors. After leaving the Grand Canyon, the family continued east toward their planned destination of Winslow, Arizona, where Linda had made reservations at a family motel. They planned to spend the night in Winslow before continuing their journey east on Route 66, the legendary highway that Bob remembered from songs he had heard as a teenager. The drive from the Grand Canyon to Winslow took them through high desert and pine forests, landscapes that seemed to change every few miles as they descended from the higher elevations around Flagstaff. The children pressed their faces against the windows, fascinated by the endless variety of the Arizona landscape. They stopped for lunch at a roadside diner that advertised authentic Route 66 atmosphere, where the walls were covered with vintage signs and photographs celebrating the golden age of American highway travel. Tommy was fascinated by the historical displays, while Sarah was more interested in the jukebox that played songs from the 1950s and 1960s. Michelle photographed the family at the diner, capturing images that showed them relaxed and happy as they enjoyed their road trip adventure. These would be among the last photographs ever taken of the Johnson family, preserving forever their joy and togetherness in the hours before their lives were destroyed. But surveillance agents were also in the diner, seated at a booth where they could observe the Johnson family while appearing to be ordinary travelers. The agents recorded the family's conversations and took note of their interactions with the restaurant staff, building a detailed timeline of their final day alive. After lunch, the family continued their drive toward Winslow, traveling through desert landscapes that seemed to stretch endlessly toward distant mountains. The afternoon was hot and clear, with visibility that extended for miles across the high desert plateau. They made several stops along the way, including a visit to a Native American trading post, where Bob bought Linda a silver bracelet and Sarah selected a small dream catcher for her bedroom back home. Tommy was fascinated by a display of traditional weapons and tools, asking the shop owner detailed questions about how they were made and used. The trading post owner, an elderly Navajo man named Henry Begay, would later tell investigators that a man in a dark suit had asked questions about the Johnson family after they left, wanting to know where they were headed and what they had purchased. Henry had found the man's questions strange and intrusive, but had assumed he was some kind of government official conducting routine inquiries. What Henry didn't know was that the man was a federal agent who was tracking the Johnson family's final movements, gathering intelligence that would later be used to support false narratives about their disappearance. The family's final confirmed public sighting was at Gibson's Gas Stop Market in Flagstaff, Arizona, at 6:47 p.m. on June 18, 1983. Security cameras captured footage of the family filling up their Ford Country Squire station wagon, with Bob washing the windshield while Linda and the children went inside to use the restroom and buy snacks for the evening drive. The gas station was busy with travelers heading in both directions on Interstate 40, families and truckers and business travelers all sharing the common experience of American highway travel. The Johnson family blended seamlessly into this typical scene of American mobility and freedom. Tommy convinced his parents to let him buy a postcard featuring a vintage Route 66 sign, which he planned to send to his Little League coach back in Denver. He carefully selected a card that showed the classic Route 66 shield logo, thinking that Coach Martinez would appreciate the connection to baseball's connection to American highway culture. Sarah picked out a small cactus-shaped keychain for her best friend Jenny Thompson, whom she missed and couldn't wait to tell about their adventures at Disney World. The 8-year-old was already planning the stories she would share when she returned to school in the fall. Michelle bought 2 rolls of film, having already used most of her supply documenting their journey from Denver. She calculated that she had enough film remaining to document their visit to Winslow and the next day's drive through Texas, with additional rolls reserved for their week at Disney World. Linda purchased snacks and drinks for the family, including Tommy's favorite trail mix and Sarah's preferred juice boxes. She also bought a detailed road atlas that showed alternate routes through Texas, thinking that they might want to explore different paths than their original plan. Bob asked the gas station attendant, a 19-year-old college student named Mark Rodriguez, for directions to their motel in Winslow and recommendations for family restaurants in the area. Mark was friendly and helpful, providing a local map and suggesting several places that he thought would appeal to families with children. Mark would later tell FBI investigators that the Johnson family had seemed completely normal during their stop at his station. They appeared happy and excited about their trip, with no signs of stress or concern about anything. The children were well-behaved and polite, while Bob and Linda seemed like typical parents enjoying a family vacation. But Mark also remembered something else that would trouble investigators for decades. While the Johnson family was inside the convenience store, a man in a dark sedan had approached him asking questions about the family. The man had shown what appeared to be federal identification and had asked about the family's destination, their purchases, and any conversations they had had with station personnel. Mark had found the questioning strange and somewhat intimidating, but had assumed it was some kind of routine security check. He had provided the information requested, never imagining that he was helping agents track a family that was about to be murdered by their own government. The Johnson family left Gibson's gas stop at approximately 7:15 p.m., driving east on Interstate 40 toward Winslow in the golden light of a desert sunset. The children were excited about reaching their motel and going swimming in the pool before dinner, while Bob and Linda looked forward to a quiet evening planning the next phase of their journey. Michelle took photographs through the car windows as they drove, capturing images of the dramatic desert landscape painted in the warm colors of the setting sun. These would be the last photographs she ever took, preserving forever the beauty of their final evening as a family. But they were not alone on the highway. Multiple surveillance vehicles had been tracking their movement throughout the day, coordinating through encrypted radio communications to maintain constant observation without appearing suspicious. Federal agents were positioned at strategic locations along Interstate 40, waiting for the optimal moment to execute their orders. Somewhere on the 50-mile stretch of highway between Flagstaff and Winslow, Arizona, the Johnson family encountered a roadblock that would change their lives forever. The exact location and circumstances of their final stop may never be fully known, but evidence suggests that they were pulled over by agents posing as law enforcement officers conducting routine traffic stops. Bob Johnson, trusting in the authority of federal agents and believing that he was dealing with legitimate law enforcement, complied with orders to exit their vehicle. He had no reason to suspect that the men who approached their car with badges and official identification were actually there to kill him and his entire family. Linda and the children remained in the station wagon initially, probably assuming that this was a routine traffic stop that would be resolved quickly. Sarah may have been excited to see real police officers, while Tommy might have been curious about their equipment and procedures. Michelle, with her photographer's eye for detail, may have noticed things about the agents that seemed unusual or out of place. Her training in observing people and situations could have made her aware that something wasn't quite right about the men who had stopped their family. But whatever the children observed or suspected in those final moments, they were powerless to change what happened next. The family that had been excited about reaching their motel in Winslow, Arizona, would never complete their journey. Their dreams of Disney World, family memories, and future togetherness were about to be destroyed by agents of their own government. The details of what happened during the Johnson family's final moments alive may never be fully known. Federal agents involved in the operation were trained to leave no witnesses and no evidence that could later be used to expose their activities. The family's death was designed to appear like a disappearance rather than a murder, protecting the agents and their superiors from any possibility of justice or accountability. Bob Johnson, The Vietnam veteran who had tried to do the right thing by exposing government corruption was eliminated along with his innocent wife and children. The man who had served his country with honor in Southeast Asia was betrayed by the same government he had risked his life to defend. Lyndon Johnson, the dedicated teacher who had spent her life educating children and strengthening her community, died because she had married a man of conscience who couldn't stay silent about injustice. Her careful planning of their family vacation had unknowingly provided the perfect cover for her family's murder. Michelle Johnson, the talented photographer with dreams of documenting important stories around the world, was killed because she was related to a man who had discovered uncomfortable truths about American foreign policy. Her artistic vision and journalistic ambitions were destroyed before she had the chance to use them for good. Tommy Johnson, the baseball-loving boy who believed in fair play and the American dream, died because his father had witnessed violations of the principles that Tommy thought his country represented. His innocent enthusiasm for the game that symbolized American values couldn't protect him from the reality of American power. Sarah Johnson, the 8-year-old who believed in fairy tales and happy endings, was murdered because she belonged to a family that powerful people wanted to eliminate. Her trust in the goodness of adults and her excitement about Disney World couldn't save her from the brutality of government agents who valued secrecy more than innocent life. The Johnson family's Ford Country Squire station wagon, loaded with suitcases and vacation souvenirs, was driven to a remote location off Interstate 40, where it was buried beneath tons of earth and debris. The agents who killed the family used heavy construction equipment to dig a grave deep enough to hide their crime for decades. For 41 years, the Johnson family rested in an unmarked grave beside one of America's busiest highways, their vacation dreams buried along with their remains. Thousands of travelers passed over their final resting place every day, unaware that 5 innocent people lay beneath the asphalt, victims of a government conspiracy that valued political expediency over human life. The investigation that followed the Johnson family's disappearance was a carefully orchestrated cover-up designed to prevent the truth from ever coming to light. FBI agents who were supposed to find the missing family were actually working to ensure that they would never be found, protecting the operation that had eliminated them. Special Agent Patricia Williams, the 15-year veteran assigned to lead the investigation, spent 5 years creating the appearance of a thorough search, while actually preventing any real evidence from being discovered. Agent Williams interviewed hundreds of witnesses, coordinated searches across multiple states, and generated thousands of pages of investigative reports, all while knowing exactly what had happened to the family she was supposedly trying to find. The federal investigation involved hundreds of agents and cost millions of taxpayer dollars, but it was designed from the beginning to fail. Every promising lead was abandoned, every potential breakthrough was dismissed, and every witness who might have provided useful information was discredited or intimidated into silence. Carol Martinez, Lyndon Johnson's sister, became the family spokesperson and organized civilian search efforts that continued long after official investigations had been scaled back. Carol refused to believe that her sister's family could simply vanish without a trace, continuing to search and advocate for answers, even when law enforcement agencies had moved on to other cases. But Carol was fighting against more than just time and limited resources. She was battling a federal conspiracy that included some of the same agents who were supposedly helping her find her missing relatives. The people she trusted to bring her sister's family home were the same people who had murdered them and buried them in the desert. For decades, the Johnson family case remained officially open but dormant, reviewed periodically by new investigators who inevitably reached the same dead ends that their predecessors had encountered. The agents responsible for the family's murder were promoted within their agencies, assigned to new cases, and eventually retired with full benefits and honors. Operation Desert Shield, the illegal arms trafficking program that Bob Johnson had threatened to expose, continued operating for almost 2 decades after his death, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in profits that funded covert operations around the world. The program's existence remained classified until congressional investigations in the early 2000s finally revealed the scope of American government involvement in international arms dealing. But even when Operation Desert Shield was finally exposed and shut down, the connection to the Johnson family murders remained hidden. The agents who had killed 5 innocent people to protect the program's secrecy were never identified or held accountable for their crimes. Time seemed to have buried the truth along with the Johnson family, protecting the perpetrators and ensuring that justice would never be served. The conspiracy had worked perfectly for over 4 decades, with no evidence remaining that could expose the agents who had committed murder to protect government secrets. But in March 2024, a routine highway expansion project along Interstate 40 between Flagstaff and Winslow would finally bring the truth to light in ways that no one could have anticipated. The Arizona Department of Transportation had planned the highway expansion for several years, designing it to accommodate increased traffic volume and improve safety along one of the state's busiest transportation corridors. The project involved widening Interstate 40 from 4 lanes to 6 lanes, requiring extensive excavation and construction along a 50-mile stretch of highway. Construction crews began work in early March 2024, using modern ground-penetrating radar and soil analysis equipment to survey the area before beginning major excavation. The technology available to the construction teams in 2024 was far more sophisticated than anything that had been available to investigators in the 1980s. On March 15, 2024, exactly 40 years and 9 months after the Johnson family had disappeared, ground-penetrating radar operators detected unusual metallic objects buried approximately 15 feet below the current ground level, about 50 yards off the highway, in an area that had been undisturbed for decades. Initial excavation revealed corroded metal that appeared to be automotive parts, buried beneath decades of accumulated soil and desert debris. The construction supervisor, Maria Santos, immediately contacted the Arizona State Police when it became clear that the discovered objects might be related to a vehicle. Detective Sarah Chen, a veteran investigator with the Arizona State Police Cold Case Unit, was assigned to oversee the excavation and determine whether the discovery might be connected to any unsolved cases. Detective Chen had spent 15 years investigating cold cases and had developed a reputation for solving mysteries that other investigators had abandoned. As the excavation continued under Detective Chen's supervision, the scope of the discovery became clear. Buried beneath tons of earth and accumulated debris was a complete automobile, a blue 1981 Ford Country Squire station wagon that had been deliberately hidden from view for over 4 decades. The license plates, though severely corroded by exposure to desert conditions, were still partially readable. Detective Chen was able to determine that the plates had been issued in Colorado, and computer records quickly identified them as belonging to Robert Johnson of 1247 Maple Drive, Denver, Colorado. Detective Chen immediately recognized the significance of the discovery. The Johnson family disappearance had been one of America's most famous unsolved missing persons cases, generating national media attention and inspiring books, documentaries, and television programs for decades. But the discovery of the Johnson family's station wagon was only the beginning of revelations that would expose a government conspiracy that had remained hidden for over 4 decades. As investigators carefully excavated the buried vehicle, they discovered that the interior contained personal belongings that had been remarkably preserved by the dry desert conditions. Michelle's Canon AE-1 camera was still in its case, containing undeveloped film that would later provide crucial evidence about the family's final days. Tommy's baseball glove and Baltimore Orioles jersey were found exactly where he had left them, along with his collection of baseball cards and the postcards he had planned to send to friends back home. The boy's dreams of Major League stardom had been buried along with his remains. Sarah's stuffed bear Teddy was discovered in the back seat, faded and worn but still recognizable as the constant companion that had traveled everywhere with the 8-year-old. The sight of the small stuffed animal brought tears to the eyes of hardened investigators who had seen decades of human tragedy. Linda's purse contained family photographs, the postcards she had written but never sent, and her carefully organized travel itinerary, with notes about attractions they had planned to visit. Her dedication to creating perfect family memories was preserved in documents that survived long after the family had been destroyed. Bob's wallet contained his driver's license, military identification card, and photographs of his wife and children. The images showed a happy family at various stages of their lives together, capturing moments of joy and togetherness that had been cut short by government agents who valued secrecy over human life. But investigators also discovered something else in the buried station wagon, evidence that would finally expose the truth about what had happened to the Johnson family and why they had been killed. Hidden beneath the vehicle's spare tire were classified documents that had been planted there after the family's murder, materials related to Operation Desert Shield and the illegal arms trafficking program that Bob Johnson had threatened to expose. The documents included financial records, shipping manifests, and communications between federal agents and foreign contacts. Most damning of all were internal FBI memos discussing the Johnson problem and the need to eliminate security risks to protect Operation Desert Shield from exposure. The memos, dated just weeks before the family's disappearance, showed that federal agents had been planning their murder for months. The documents found in the Johnson family's grave provided investigators with names, dates, and details about a conspiracy that involved dozens of federal agents and reached the highest levels of American government. Operation Desert Shield had been far more extensive than congressional investigations had revealed, and the Johnson family had been killed to protect secrets that went beyond simple arms trafficking. Detective Chen's discovery triggered federal investigations involving the Department of Justice, the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility, and congressional oversight committees. Within weeks of the station wagon's discovery, a conspiracy that had remained hidden for over 4 decades was finally exposed to public scrutiny. The investigation revealed that Operation Desert Shield had been used to fund covert operations around the world, including activities that violated international law and American foreign policy. The profits from illegal arms sales had been diverted to support regime changes, terrorist organizations, and other activities that Congress had never authorized or approved. Bob Johnson's decision to expose the arms trafficking had threatened to bring down not just Operation Desert Shield, but an entire network of covert operations that had been operating without oversight or accountability for decades. His murder, along with that of his innocent family, had been authorized to protect a system of illegal activities that generated billions of dollars in off-the-books funding. Several retired federal agents were arrested and charged with murder, conspiracy, and violations of civil rights. Patricia Williams, the FBI agent who had supposedly investigated the Johnson family's disappearance, was taken into custody at her retirement home in Sarasota, Florida. Agent Williams, now 79 years old, initially denied any involvement in the Johnson family's murder, but faced with documentary evidence found in their buried station wagon, she eventually confessed to her role in the cover-up and provided details about the operation that had killed 5 innocent people. The revelations about the Johnson family murders sent shockwaves through American law enforcement and intelligence communities. The case became a symbol of government overreach and the danger of allowing covert operations to operate without proper oversight or accountability. Carol Martinez, Linda Johnson's sister, finally learned the truth about what had happened to her family after 41 years of searching and hoping for answers. The closure she had sought for decades came with the devastating knowledge that her sister and her family had been murdered by the very government agents who were supposed to protect them. Congressional hearings were held to examine the full scope of Operation Desert Shield and other covert programs that had operated without proper oversight. The Johnson family case became central to discussions about government accountability, the protection of whistleblowers, and the limits of executive power. Today, there is a memorial along Interstate 40 between Flagstaff and Winslow, marking the location where the Johnson family was discovered and honoring their memory. The inscription reads, "In memory of Robert, Linda, Michelle, Tommy, and Sarah Johnson, a family whose courage to speak truth to power cost them everything, but whose sacrifice finally brought justice to light." The Johnson family's road trip that began with dreams of Disney World and family togetherness became a story about the price of integrity in a system where powerful interests will kill to protect their secrets. Their disappearance in 1983 remained a mystery for 41 years, but their discovery in 2024 finally exposed a conspiracy that had operated in darkness for decades. The 5 people who loaded their Ford Country Squire on that sunny morning in June 1983 never made it home to Denver, never saw Disney World, and never had the chance to live the lives they had planned together. But their father's refusal to stay silent about government corruption, even at the ultimate cost, eventually brought down a criminal operation that had betrayed everything America claims to represent. Bob Johnson's military service had taught him that some principles are worth dying for, but he never imagined that speaking truth to power would cost the lives of his innocent wife and children. His decision to expose government corruption was motivated by the same patriotism that had led him to serve in Vietnam, but the system he had sworn to defend ultimately destroyed his family. Linda Johnson's careful planning of their family vacation had unknowingly provided the perfect cover for their murder, but her dedication to creating lasting memories ensured that evidence of their love and happiness would survive to inspire others. Her belief in the importance of family bonds was preserved in the photographs and documents found with their remains. Michelle Johnson's photographic documentation of their final journey provided investigators with crucial evidence about their movements and activities, fulfilling her dream of using images to reveal important truths. Her artistic vision and journalistic instincts contributed to justice even after her death. Tommy Johnson's love of baseball and belief in fair play represented the American values that his father had died trying to protect. His innocent enthusiasm for the game that symbolized American ideals was a reminder of what the country could be when it lived up to its highest principles. Sarah Johnson's trust in the goodness of adults and her excitement about Disney World represented the innocence that government conspiracies destroy when they prioritize secrecy over human life. Her death was a reminder of the real cost of allowing covert operations to operate without accountability or oversight. This story reminds us that truth has a way of surfacing, even when powerful people do everything possible to keep it buried. The Johnson family paid the ultimate price for their integrity, But their sacrifice eventually brought justice and accountability to a system that had operated in darkness for decades. The highway marker that honors the Johnson family's memory stands as a testament to the importance of speaking truth to power, even when the cost is everything you hold dear. Their story continues to inspire whistleblowers, journalists, and ordinary citizens who refuse to stay silent when they witness injustice. If this story moved you as much as it moved me, please subscribe for more investigations into cases where ordinary people paid extraordinary prices to expose the truth. Let me know in the comments what you think about government accountability, and whether you believe the Johnson family's sacrifice was ultimately worth the justice it finally brought about. Remember that this is a fictional story created for entertainment purposes, inspired by real concerns about government accountability and the protection of whistleblowers. All characters, events, and government operations described are imaginary, and any resemblance to real persons or situations is purely coincidental.